well, this group, it should suffice that you see that I'm going live and you can watch this later. So little delays probably won't cause much difficulty, hopefully. So if you are interested in learning more about EMDR, I would really encourage you to reach out to me, Fox, F-O-X, EMDR therapy at gmail.com. You can always ask me questions. You can always go to emdria.org like I went over last time, but I want to reiterate that. You can find someone who takes your insurance and who maybe even takes your employment assistance program, EAP. That's a big thing that people will do. Spam. For a lot of people, 6 sessions a year isn't really a lot for intense therapy. For EMDR, that could be a whole target sequence, though. So that's something to think about. And on top of that, a lot of people, at least when I was seeing EAP people, I'm transferring my license over to another state right now. I'm in Georgia, but I'm going to keep my license in Colorado where I was living before. But so what I would do with the agency is I'd see people for those 6 sessions, and if they wanted to keep coming, we'd take their insurance source. So you get 6 free sessions with an EAP, Employment Assistance Program, and then you do more, but you have to have a copay if you have insurance, and that's usually like $30-40. Not horrible for changing your whole perspective on things and taking away trauma, right? Or out of pocket, which is here. I mean, I hear some people charging $150 a session for EMDR or for therapy. I encourage you to figure out what works out best for you financially. I encourage you to not be hesitant about asserting your needs and asking what your insurance benefits are, what your behavioral health benefits are. That's a key phrase to keep in mind. EAP, again, Employment Assistance Program, that's crucial. That's one thing to keep in mind, what insurance you have, what your behavioral health plan looks like. When it's time to do open enrollment, which I think now that's still going on, I really encourage you to check out what you put on your plan in terms of benefits in behavioral health, because a lot of people will not realize, oh, I needed more maybe, or I needed this, that, and the other thing. It's like, well, you should probably maybe check that out, figure out what you want to look at here in terms of your behavioral health. Assume maybe that you might need a few sessions or not. I mean, but now's a good time to determine that, for the coming year. So again, I mean, there's nothing like being proactive on that and determining kind of what it is that best suits you. We don't always know that, and it's kind of like hindsight's 2020. But I would say sooner better than later in terms of now is the perfect time for that. And it doesn't matter what you've done before. Let's figure it out now. And I don't know if that's if you've already got a job and you're dealing with that, then that's fine. And that's something that you may want to talk about with your employer. That makes it even easier in some ways. So that's a good thing to consider. It's always good to do referrals. It's always good to talk to someone. In other words, word of mouth. Talk to someone who has, been there before, kind of figured what is, like, what did they like about therapy? What did they not like? That's really crucial to determine. Therapy is as varied as personality types. I mean, meaning therapists are as diverse a group as people you meet online that you're looking to date or looking to get to know, right? I mean, I'm not joking here. It's one of those things where if someone doesn't strike your fancy as a therapist, don't just think about it this way. It's really weird. If you think about it in terms of if you want to have a partner and you want to meet the right person, then, I mean, do you think after one bad date or even a few that you never want to have a relationship ever? That you want to just give up and you want to be alone? Most people probably wouldn't think that way. And so what does that mean? Well, why am I using that metaphor? Well, because it should be as absurd to consider that if you have a therapist that doesn't suit your personality, that you should never go to therapy again, right? Because that's essentially what we do when we say that. And listen, I have nothing but respect for people who have bad experiences with counseling and want to take a break or think the industry isn't right for them. Because there's one thing that's different in kind of love, viewing things that way, and viewing things in terms of, well, there's a few differences between romance and therapy, hopefully, right? It's very unethical for a therapist to get involved with a client, A. And B, there's an entire kind of impenetrable industry involved in the mental health kind of realm, right? And there's a lot of reasons for that. And they're kind of things that right now can't really be helped. I mean, okay, we a culture that really values insurance, and we have a kind of an insurance industrial complex. I'm not speaking poorly about that at all, but that's made therapy go from this realm of kind of like a metaphysical thing, or you pay and you go into an expert's room with a chair like Freud. You know, everyone can't pay that. And why would they? I mean, out of pocket, that's intense. But what that's given rise to is, you know, you will pay for this many sessions, and this is your copay, and this is what you get, this is what you don't get, and you have to do this many treatment plans, and you have to have a diagnosis because otherwise insurance is going to pay for it. So there's a lot of confusion on the front end when it comes to mental health. And so the good news is you can dispel a lot of that just by talking to an agency. If you're wanting to go somewhere that's publicly funded, that's bigger, or talking to your individual therapist if you go, or one of the therapists at a private practice. You know, therapy spans all the way from solo practitioners who are doing a private practice to people who do it with a huge consortium and are an agency, and you find them and they're working somewhere like that. That's what I did for a while. So people would find me, or they'd get referred to me through the agency, and we'd have to do treatment plans every 6 months. It's like, that's not bad. But you do have to have a diagnosis, even if that's something like adjustment disorder, right? So you have to determine what is it that is going to best suit your ends. Are you really private? Do you never want anything on record ever, including a diagnosis? Well, then you unfortunately may have to pay out of pocket for everything, or you may have to figure out some stuff with that, because I don't have any answer for that. Anytime you want insurance to cover stuff, they usually want to have at least a say in it. But the good news is mental health is becoming much less stigmatized, becoming destigmatized, especially anxiety and depression. And I think to an extent trauma, I hope. I mean, I'm really against stigma, as you would expect for therapists. But I think trauma especially is something in which it's really unfair that the person who had something happen to them is also the person who has to pay for it having happened to them. It's horrible if you think about it. It's double traumatization. So don't let that stop. The only way legally your records could ever be taken or disclosed is if you're involved in a court case. And even then, a lot of therapists will fight to not release your records. If you're involved in like a competency hearing for mental health, if things like custody, or if you're a threat to yourself or others, particularly others, because then you've got kind of something where someone else may have argued to have that open in court. But I mean, these are very extreme circumstances that may not apply to any of you who ever listen to this. So for that reason, I would say it's essential that you push through the stigma, take some deep breaths, take those steps toward getting EMDR and other help. I mean, a lot of educators are going to be in this same boat with me against stigma and very into the idea of exploring mental health and being a front-running person who represents the importance of getting mental health. So I think in that way I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. But it never hurts to recognize and validate that there's stigma. Even, I mean, with teachers, you know, you might not want someone to know you're getting therapy. Of course, that's understandable. I mean, I'm not so blind to my own profession that there's still stigma involved as to think, oh yeah, everybody should just proclaim that they're getting therapy. It's not right for everyone. And I don't expect it to be. But I want to go back over, I'm supposed to be doing kind of a review today. I mean, what I would really like to do is anyone who's watching this, I would like you to ask anything that you're really interested in hearing more from me about. I'm very active on Twitter at Fox Therapy LLC. That's where I post a lot of stuff. It's a very irreverent approach to therapy, and not in a cringe way. It's not try hard. I get into the validation of the fact that that's a lot of prepositions there. So I validate that, like, live boldly. Well, what does that mean? How do you start doing that? That's not enough. You need steps. Well, let's give an example. How would you live boldly? Well, first, take some deep breaths, and you could set one action step that involves something bold, right? Something like taking a step out of your comfort zone and maybe going to look at getting a gym membership if that's something you struggle with, or talking to one new person, asking, let's say if you have really extreme social phobia, but you still go out and order stuff like a barista. Let's say like you get stuff from a barista or from Starbucks. Let's say that you ask someone like, okay, you ask how their day is going, or you ask their name if their name tag isn't on, or you ask them about one of their tattoos, or you do something, one step toward getting out of your shell and getting to know the people around you, right? That's what I would say you do to actualize that whole live boldly, live strong, mottos like step out boldly, show up. It's like, what? If you're like me, you want to know what things really mean when they're little cute phrases, and what they actually can do for you, and what they apply to. And so for me, it gets into setting incremental goals that people can actually hold on to and actually pursue, and stay structured in doing, right? So I would encourage you to have an accountability partner, maybe another teacher or a close friend. I know teachers tend to be very close and go out and get drinks and do things, and stay in the trenches with each other, which is amazing. Start doing that for the next phases of things you want to do in life, whether that's meeting new people, pursuing a new hobby, like your art or your writing or anything like that, or fitness. I keep using that because I hear that one a lot. I hear people really be overwhelmed with that. So I'm not at all saying everyone should go be a gym rat. I mean, I'm not Mr. Universe. However, that was a personal goal of mine, was to go incrementally, consistently go to the gym. And I did, and I made some pretty cool gains. And I've noticed being able to lift more, being able to pull myself up with less assistance on the pull-up bar. And it builds. And it's one of those things where last time I got physical fitness and mental fitness, and how we give ourselves a break on physical fitness because we don't expect ourselves, well, we don't often give ourselves a break, right? What I mean is we don't expect ourselves to be able to lift 100 pounds right out of the gate. Why we can't, because we haven't built that muscle up. We don't do that with mindfulness or with a lot of physical, with a lot of mental stuff. We don't view our mental health in the same capacity. We think we should either cope or not. And so there's a dichotomy there, right? So I still encourage you, do everything you can to overcome that dichotomy. Reward yourself for small victories. And now make the reward something that won't make you feel guilty, right? Like don't go and completely blow a lot of your progress at the gym by giving yourself permission to do something really counterproductive. And don't give yourself permission, if your goal is to meet new people and be social, to go be agoraphobic for a week. It's like, no, we want the reward to be something like go have a piece of cake or a lemonade or a drink if you're not dealing with substance issue, or whatever that looks like, right? I really don't encourage actually alcohol or anything like that, but I do encourage small rewards and things that are like breadcrumbs along the way that keep you going. So as far as the EMDR goes, I went into that a lot last time. Into the access of it and accessing it is more helpful and beneficial, because if you're really serious about trauma recovery, me explaining it's going to help. I explained how it worked last time. The eye movement mimics REM sleep. It distracts you while you're thinking of trauma, and it helps you to stay a little distant from it while still your brain you're telling your brain that you're safe. Those things I went over, if you're really on the fence about it, I say go for it, because a good EMDR therapist, like, tell the therapist, hey, I can't go on anymore when they're doing the eye movement, and look away, or tell them, EMDR therapist is going to tell you to give a non-verbal stop signal to decide on one before you start, like, or something like that, because sometimes you might not even feel like speaking if you're kind of feeling dissociative. Or you can say stop. Anytime someone says stop, we're going to know as a therapist not to go forward. That's just out of the gate. So I think just wrapping it up with these encouraging facts, like, you can find on Emdr people that are basic trained, that's the lowest level. It's still good, but people that are certified, that's a step up, and that's pretty damn good. That's most therapists who are EMDR trained, by the way, who make it their singular modality. I would say go for EMDR certified if you have some intense trauma and you want to make sure the person's been doing it a while. And last, but definitely not least, I would say last but most relevant, are EMDR consultants like me. That means that you have gone as far as you can with EMDR. You've become someone that can essentially teach EMDR to other therapists once you submit a curriculum, or Emdr is open to having people teach it. There's a freeze on it now, I think. But consultants are, it's what it sounds like in the name. We consult with other therapists. We are very enmeshed in the most recent findings. We are at the forefront of EMDR because it's our bread and butter. Okay, it's what we do the most as therapists. So if you really want to get somebody who is potentially going to answer every possible question you have about EMDR and have dealt with a lot of different cases, if you have complex trauma, you want to possibly look at a consultant. And they may actually recommend someone to you who's certified. So there's often kind of a level there. Not always. You could just learn how to do EMDR, who charges a more expensive rate than a consultant who's relatively young or who has a sliding scale fee, right? As always, check around, have those conversations. Don't be afraid to ask about sliding scales or anything like that, because we're all responsible for. And so therapists are responsible for sharing their own hang-ups and their own preferences, and if they can't go beyond or below a certain fee because they have rent to pay for, either at their own home or actually in the building they're working, if they're still doing that, then they might not be able to come down on fee price, but you might not be able to pay a huge amount. So there's always that give and take, unless insurance is involved, and then you've got like a solid copay. So I'm going to wrap up here and just emdr.org. Don't be afraid to explore EMDR before jumping into it, but also you can go slowly. You can do the complex exercise with a therapist at first, and you can look that up. The complex exercise involves imagining somewhere you feel safe and calm, imagining the details of it. So all the sensory elements you can imagine, right? So sight, sound, smell, touch, even taste. If you had a favorite food somewhere you feel safe, or maybe it's the salt air in the ocean, or like you feel a crisp feeling in your mouth or your nose in the mountains, whatever it is. But so the complex exercise is not proprietary to EMDR. It's kind of from hypnotism, but EMDR adds eye movement to it, where you're or tapping your legs back and forth while you're thinking of that complex, right? So EMDR therapists teach that to clients, and the clients are encouraged to use that anytime that they're feeling dissociated, or they're starting to feel like they may dissociate or be overwhelmed. And so I would encourage you to actually, listeners and viewers, to actually try something like that, where when you're feeling, not to EMDR yourself, let me get that straight, not even to add eye movement, right? Therapists talk about, but to imagine calm places that have a lot of vivid sensory detail when you're feeling upset. And you can imagine being there and not off in another negativity, right? So I'm going to sign off for there. I'll leave more information in the comment, but please be aware there's always help. And if you feel like you might be the only person going through something, chances are you're really not. And an EMDR therapist can answer your questions. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. And I hope to hear from you soon. Feel free to private message me. I'm on here on Facebook relatively often. I try to check once a day. Every other day at least. So, and that may change. I'm a little busier here. I'm moving in. I missed kind of the sign-on point here. But again, hopefully you can all check this out now that I'm done. So, when it goes up now. So, have an awesome rest of Thursday. Hang in there. I know people are stressed right now about election stuff. Just deep breathe and focus on something you enjoy, okay? I'm signing off for now.